All right, since we're all here, hey, the gang's all here. We'll start the meeting of the Oxford Board of Selectmen for April 28th. And I'd like to just read this notice. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, which is General Law, Chapter 38, subsection 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order concerning imposition on strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Meetings in the town of Oxford will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. We will strive to provide access to such meetings via a link to call in or other similar options. In the event we are unable to accommodate the same, despite best efforts, we will post recorded sessions of the meeting as soon as possible following the same. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings. And before we start, as we have been for a few of our meetings, I would like us to just take a moment of silence and prayer for all our first responders, for those people that have been infected, those that have had to that follow the hardship of a relative or friend dying. If we could just take a moment and remember them, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. All right, first item on our agenda is Municipal Clerk's Week's a proclamation. Now we'll read that proclamation into the record. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and whereas the municipal clerk services as the information center on functions of local government and community, and whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in educational programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk, therefore be it resolved that we, the selectmen of the town of Oxford, do hereby recognize the week of May 3rd through May 9th in the year 2020 as Municipal Clerk Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerk, Lori A. Kelly, and to her assistants, Ann D. Morgan and Laura B. LeBrenton, for the vital services that they provide and their exemplary dedication to the town of Oxford. And this is given to under the 28th of April, 2020, and it's signed by the entire board and our town manager. And we present this via remote control to our one and only Laurie Kelly. You're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I think if ever there was a year to recognize municipal clerks, it would be this one, between a presidential year and what we're all going through right now. So, you know, first, I just want to give my my best to Ann Morgan and Laura LeBreton, my right and left hand, who we could not get through this without. And just as a little bit of background on my participation with the International Institute of Municipal Clerks, I actually graduated from their program 22 years ago. There are 122, ironically, 122 Massachusetts clerks out of 351 cities and towns that have completed this program. And worldwide, there are 4,775 as of February. So it's quite a large group of people and quite an intense program that you go through for a 3-year period. Certainly, I have no regrets about going. I made friends from other states that I still see today at New England conferences, and a professor that latched onto he was a parliamentarian actually, but he latched onto my parliamentary procedure knowledge and asked me to do some classes with him after I graduated. So it was a great experience, and I always encourage clerks that haven't participated to join in, because it's certainly a personal growth opportunity.
Again, very good, Lori. As you know, I'm a great supporter. Think you're a great person doing a wonderful job. Just keep it up. And I know this guy really appreciates you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on our agenda is our COVID-19 update. We'll hand that over to the town manager.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. And I too would like to extend, before I go into the update, the notion that our clerk's office works extremely hard, and these are difficult times for every department, including the clerk's office, and working in cooperation and educating the people about the most important functions of government, which are housed in the clerk's office, is very important. And our town clerk takes that job very seriously, and we're all the better for that. So thank you, Lori, in particular, and thank you to both Ann and Laura LeBreton. And on the heels of that, talking about COVID-19 update, since our last meeting on April 14th, the governor, as of today, extended all essential service emergency order to continue to apply beyond what was originally going to expire on May 4th to May 18th. And both the governor and lieutenant governor on a phone call today had actually talked about creating a reopening advisory board in anticipation at some point that we're going to have to do a kind of phased in way of getting our economy back up and running and getting people back to some sense of normalcy. But this emergency order will continue through May 18th. And once again, we look forward to any other further announcements and guidance to both our boards of health and to our local communities. Having said that, we continue to work very closely with the Department of Public Health. And as a result of that, we continue to get reports of positive confirmed cases of COVID-19 in our community. And more recently, as we have entered into the surge, our numbers have gone up. We have now had a total of 30 residents, and we may have a couple pending that have not hit that number to make it go higher. However, that has occurred since the reporting began. Tonight I am before you because so far we have been insulated as a community with regards to anybody who may have passed away as a result of COVID-19. Our clerk's office and our community has been informed of at least 3, and we may also have a 4th, but for now we have experienced the loss of 3 people who have defined Oxford as their primary residence. And so this evening, I say that with great sadness because regardless of the age of a person or their reason for passing away, we all know that some family somewhere has been affected by this in a profound way, in a loss of a loved one. And so we have that experience now in the town of Oxford. I also want you to know that as we continue to apprise the public of these findings, you are the first to know about the actual recent losses in the community, and we will inform the community of those losses through our updates, which we continue to post on our website and social media, and to all of our Oxford staff, and also to news media that has reached out to us. This evening, I've also attached what I thought was a very good presentation through the Department of Public Health that really looks at the entire pandemic from about 36,000 feet up, and then really takes all of the data that's been coming through and tries to, I think, bring it down to a level that we can all understand. And so I wanted to make sure that the board had that to understand where we are in central Massachusetts in terms of the overall confirmatory patient surge, as well as where we may be going in terms of our overall exposure as a community. Having said that, the Department of Public Health has collected an enormous amount of information and has worked more recently in disseminating that to communities like ours. And so I think it's a very healthy presentation to give to you this evening. Since we met last, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has announced an additional $19 billion for coronavirus food assistance. I know this board has been very cognizant of the Oxford food shelves, weekly deliveries, and they continue to feed at least 50 or more families in our community. We have understood how important our food supply chain is. There is, growing concern among communities how we will continue to sustain that. And so the federal government, I think, worked expeditiously and now is looking to seek to procure hundreds of millions of dollars in fresh fruits, vegetables, dairy, and meat per month. And this will not only be used for food banks, but community and faith-based organizations and other nonprofits. And that will allow some flexibilities with waivers for income levels to ensure both kids and families who can get food during this pandemic, that they'll be able to do that. I know Selectman Daniels has brought this to my attention a number of times and has commented about the school program, and also being sure that other people who may be in need will be able to access these kind of resources. So this is important. We have included information about food security on our town website as well. Before you this evening, I've also scheduled an opportunity for the board to consider Memorial Day festivities. We have in your packet included a recent email from Terry Cummings, who is part of our honor guard. And, he wanted this board to consider what many other communities have already done, which was to either cancel Memorial Day festivities outright, or to think about perhaps rescheduling it for a later date. I would keep in mind that as we go forward with the consideration, it is the board's opportunity to weigh in and provide comment to that. And so at this point, I would ask the board if they have any questions about that, or would like to discuss it before actually moving to make a recommendation, so that the honor guard and other people who usually would be involved in this could make a decision. Mind you, the emergency declaration is going to May 18th and may go even beyond that in some kind of varying degree for non-essential providers and also residents.
Comments by the board? Your thoughts on this matter?
Hi, Dennis. I'd be inclined to postpone it. To the manager's point, even though there is a possibility we'll reopen on the 18th, we're going to clearly have to do some sort of gradually moving into large crowds and so forth. And I think I'm in favor of postponing it, or canceling it rather.
Thank you. John?
Yes, I think Terry's point is well taken. However, my personal feeling on this is that I would wait until the governor's date has expired before we make that decision. The date of the 18th, I don't know when our meeting will be. Close to that date, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I know it doesn't take much to put this all together. So even if we had 2 weeks lead time, the veterans organizations could put this together.
All right. Thank you. Mike?
I would have to agree with Selectman Sad. This is Memorial Day. You know, it's a small event in town, but it has a lot of meaning. To just outright cancel it right now, I don't necessarily think that's the best idea. I think we should postpone that decision till a later date. Like Selectman Sad said, it doesn't make much. It doesn't take much to throw the ceremony together, but it does have, you know, again, it has a great meaning. So I'm on board with Selectman Sad to kind of postpone a decision at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Megan?
I just have a question. Jen, you can probably answer it. I don't know how in depth you spoke to Terry, but I noticed in his email that we had in our packet, he had suggested postponing it to September 17th because that date also had significance and was significant to, I believe, 6 residents he had indicated. Do you know, was it just his suggestion or was that the opinion of the honor guard that they wanted it to be postponed to that date?
I think he was offering that a better distance from where we are now. There are a number of members of the Honor Guard who may be considered more at risk because of their age category. And also, I think just the uncertainty of trying to pull it together. But, you know, to that point, there's nothing saying that you can wait until our next meetings in May to see where that is. Our next meeting, we're going to ask you to change the meeting that originally would have been scheduled for May 6th, so that we'll have a meeting if you approve it on May 12th, and then perhaps another meeting later in the month on May 20th, which would have normally coincided with our the day after our normal annual town election. So I think for him, I think to be on the safe side, it was a matter of thinking of the people who participate and wanting to make sure that they, you know, were not going to place themselves at risk during this time period when we might be coming out. But also to the point that he did offer a potential date in the fall. So I think it was one of those things where we could still have some kind of celebration. But I'm sure he wouldn't be opposed to including what the selectmen are saying in terms of maybe trying to make that decision and weigh in on it again in the month of May, which is shortly around the corner.
I know I personally had a hard time with this because Memorial Day is in the parade to me is very special. And I just couldn't wrap my head on to the fact of delaying it, you know, to September. That, I don't know, I guess the meaning would be there, but I kind of like the idea, John, of waiting, you know, a couple of weeks. Let's see what happens. You know, we got a meeting hopefully around the 12th, and then the meeting after that, well, we'll talk about that one too. So we have at least one more before, and by the 12th, usually I would think by then the governor will have given us again a pretty better, much better outlook as to what's going to happen in the future. So I don't know about the rest of the board, but I would say let's just table this until the next meeting and we'll discuss it then. Is that approved by everybody? All right, everybody's shaking their heads. So
Do you want a motion then?
sure. You want to do that, Cheryl?
Yep, I'll make a motion that we postpone the decision for the Memorial Day 2020 event until our next board meeting.
I second that motion.
Great. Any more comments? I'll call for a vote.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We'll revisit this issue at our next meeting, which will hopefully be May 12th. All right, Jen, you're back on. Yeah, Jen, your microphone's not on.
Okay. I said, thank you very much. I apologize. I didn't unmute myself. The next item is to speak to you a little bit about the fact that the governor has extended the temporary closure of all public schools, private and elementary, through the remainder of the academic year. That also includes in-summer learning programs and the like, not even being able to be considered plausible before June 29th. I just want you to know that I have had some extensive conversations with our superintendent about where they are at in looking at their overall picture for both staffing and budgeting. We have talked extensively about scaling back our transportation contracts with our busing. I know the superintendent has worked diligently on this. We're both on the same page. From what I understand, we're close to making a actual arrangement with the current bus company that I think will be very much in the interest of the town and save us money, considering that the buses haven't been rolling and their drivers had been laid off. Having said that, going forward from the particular expiration of the declared emergency, which was going to be over with by next week, going forward, there's indications that there'll continue to be a modification in what would have been our normal expenses. Just to give you an idea, we typically expend roughly about $65,000 a month for those kinds of costs. And so we're trying to see right now, the superintendent and I are scrutinizing our budgets. We're looking at areas that we know may be able to be modified in the anticipation that we're going to have to make up ground for the expenses that we're incurring in our areas for first response and Board of Health, and also understanding that we're looking forward to fiscal year 21 as well. Just to be mindful of some of the losses that the school has had, even though we might be able to be sort of, I think, negotiating the best interests of our taxpayers over busing contracts, an area that we wouldn't think about losing revenue are school lunches, even though we're providing, hundreds of children with school lunches as they drive up for both breakfast and lunch. It's very great, but the schools also generate revenue into an account for every school lunch that they normally would sell, at school or kids would purchase. And that's significant revenue. It can be somewhere upwards of $100,000 that may be lost during this time period that the school relies on. So we're looking at all this balancing act of where are we losing money, where do we need money to sustain ourselves, and where can we also pick up money in terms of acting in a really conservative and frugal and renegotiating manner. So I just want the board and the community to know we're ongoing doing that. And as we continue to await the state for any kind of budget consensus figure, the fiscal picture is going to become more and more important. And I'll be sharing more information with the board as we go forward. Having said that, the governor has also extended temporary closing of all non-emergency childcare programs until June 29th, 2020. And that is now been codified in an executive order. On the bright side of things, I know I've shared this with the board and we've also shared it on social media. McDonald's, which we have a franchise right here in town, had reached out to my office to let us know that starting on April 29th all the way through May 5th, that all the first responders and healthcare workers in our community are eligible, or any other community, but I'm focused here on Oxford, are eligible for a free thank you meal by just showing their work badge. And I thought that was really a nice thing to do. And they're doing other things. And in the release that we shared with the public, it talks about all of the other initiatives for feeding people across the nation. But this one was particularly heartfelt because we do have a franchise in our community. And I know some of our first responders and healthcare workers who might not know about it. We're hoping that they will take advantage of that. I just also
Jen,
go
excuse
ahead.
me.
Yep.
I don't know what the rest of the board is, but I would like to see if the board will send McDonald's a thank you letter for this great thought. I think it's a great thing for any town or city, but especially for Oxford. So I would put that as a motion that we send a letter to McDonald's thanking them for this service to our first responders.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? I'll call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. It's 5 in the affirmative. Thank you, board. Thank you, Jen.
No problem. And that'll be really nice to do. Actually, the Vice President for Government Relations that sent us that notification is one of my former colleagues in the House, Rachel Caprillion. So that'll be great. You know, I think she'll love to hear from the town of Oxford. The next item is Walmart had reached out to our police department to make sure that they communicated the specific safety measures that were being taken in the store and throughout their Walmart distribution chain. That included everything from the social distancing measures in stores and the other policies that were intended to make sure that their customers and employees are safe. I know we've generated a lot of correspondence to different people related to stores as the pandemic has unfolded. I think more and more some of the large franchises, as well as some of our local businesses that are still deemed essential, have really taken it to heart. And they are now very much wanting to follow the orders, not just from the governor, but our Board of Health, and our Board of Health agent continues to monitor compliance for that. I also have received an update from the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce about the resources for small businesses in our region. The federal government had issued out a large amount of money, $350 billion, for an initial, what they called the Paycheck Protection Program. It was mainly supposed to be geared to small businesses, and within days it was drained. And there has been another appropriation that is specifically geared towards our local community banks to work with our smaller businesses. I wanted to make this mention, even though we have put it out there also in our COVID-19 updates to the community. We have a lot of little businesses, and part of the problem is them trying to understand what they may qualify. Do they qualify for an outright grant as a little restaurant, or do they qualify for being able to get a loan with the ability to have really favorable terms to keep their employees going, and also to make sure that they'll be able to come back from this event. So this just opened up on the a couple days ago. So it's gone live again, and I want to encourage local businesses to look at the connections and to contact our local banks, because they are the ones who can hitch them up. And that didn't happen the last time, and I hate to see people not be able to take advantage of that. The next item is about updating you on the intermunicipal agreement that we had signed with the town of Dudley. We spent the better part of the entire weekend onboarding the nurses. We now also have a full complement of 1 nurse from Dudley and 2 from Oxford. I can tell you they have been extremely diligent. The contact tracing for this community has improved 20-fold. I mean it. It's been wonderful. The responses from the residents that we're following up with, along with their family members, and the outreach that's being done to verify where they're at in their disease process, and you know, other risk factors, in trying to provide them with assistance that they can self-quarantine. I can unequivocally tell you that, in listening to the response that the nurses are having, that it is a very good thing. And I'm glad this board supported it. And I'm really glad for the residents who have actually given us feedback that they feel very comfortable with the fact that we have local people who are not just checking in, but are very concerned about their welfare and giving them clinical advice where they need it, because they have felt at times that they're just a statistic and they don't know what to expect after they have been stricken by this illness. And I would like to give a shout out to the specific nurses for Oxford community. And that's Amy Granette and also Kathleen Schumer, who are both advanced practice nurses and have extensive background, and they have stepped up to the plate. They didn't have to do it. They wanted to do it, and I'm grateful that they have come on board. Also in your packet, you'll see an actual, some correspondence that comes from our police chief. In particular, you'll see that more recently, the police chief has indicated that both to me, and I wanted to share it with the board, that both locals 173 and local 170 at the very beginning of the pandemic, when it started, both of the unions agreed with the police chief and myself in negotiating terms for working in benefit times and being flexible on creating a working partnership with the unions to place the community first in addressing the changing response needs that we have. And I wanted to include those documents and make the board understand that people who are our first line responders are also understanding that the needs of the community are coming first, and that they're being very flexible with that. So I want to say thank you to the chief and to both the dispatchers and the police officers for being able to work in partnership with us and being understanding that we may have changes, not just in the work environment, which we've seen, but also in their work conditions and their benefits as they go forward. The last two items, one has to do with the donations. As you can see, every time we come before you, we have more donations, which is wonderful. And this board has been sending out those thank you letters, and I know they're very much appreciated. We have gotten some feedback about that. Recently, the Oxford Housing Authority had donated 60 gowns for protective equipment and 60 face shields. We wanted to make sure we noted that. Our Central Mass Emergency Medical Service Corporation had also donated 60 gowns and 4 bottles of disinfectant and 4 boxes of hand sanitizing wipes. This is one that my office had been contacted by the owner of the Oxford Market on Main Street, Joe Hamza. He had called because he wanted to do something for those families in need. As you know, he makes a lot of grinders and has a lot of other aspects to his business. And I put him in touch with the Oxford Food Shelf. In this past Thursday, they had been able to offer a free large grinder to every family that came through for their normal Oxford Food Shelf distribution. The Coughlin family of Columbia Tech in Westboro and Lana Houdon had donated 10 disposable lab coats, and Oxford resident Joe Weldon has donated a sewing machine for sewing of cloth masks. And to all of them, I know this board is very grateful, as I am, for their contributions. And the final item has to do with our fire and EMS department. We have implemented since we last met, our COVID-19 designated ambulance driver initiative to better protect our first responders. That way, the 2 responders in the ambulance can focus on whatever the emergent case is and not be possibly contaminating the inside of the ambulances. And so we now have 3 people that respond to an incident, but we have a designated driver that doesn't have exposure and doesn't use the same kind of personal protective gear and having to go through it. So I understand that that's working very good, and it's in an effort to keep our first responders safe. The other thing that came late to me this evening is a press release that will be going out that is coming from both Chief Sad and Chief McDonald, and it has to do with the number of requests for these individual birthday parades for children that may be at home because school has, as you know, been canceled for the rest of the year. I'm not going to speak to it. I'd rather have their release go out, but they understand that they've had a lot of requests, and they give a number of reasons why they have not been able to honor those requests. And I think it'll be very good for the citizens to get that information. And so we will post it on social media, and they will also send it out so that, you know, people understand from the perspective of a town that has not just first responders for fire prevention services, but for ambulance and emergency medical service responders, we have a different setup, and we have a very thin rank in terms of personnel to be able to man 2 stations, which we're doing. And we are really concerned about safeguarding their safety and understand there are not just with our fire department, but our police department has very specific zones that they cover for the town. And I think once people read the release, they'll understand why both chiefs have come together to just make sure that the public understood. They all love children. And if we could do it every day of the week and we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, I'm sure that they would love to honor all of that. But I did want the board to be understanding that that is coming. And that is my update for the COVID-19.
All right, very good, Jen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is continued public hearing for earth removal at Kathy Way. This is requested by Mr. Conrad Allen. Let me read the notice into the record. In accordance with provisions of the Oxford zoning bylaw, Chapter 18, the Oxford Board of Selectmen has received an application from Conrad Allen of 21 Flaxfield Road, Dudley, Mass. 01571 for a special permit for earth removal on land located at Kathy Way in 1, 2, 4, and 6 Kathy Way. Oxford Assessors Map 49, parcels 4, 4.07, 4.08, and 4.09, and the space between parcels for road. Please take notice that the Oxford Board of Selectmen will continue the public hearing concerning this special permit for earth removal to Tuesday, April 28, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. This hearing has been continued from the Selectmen's meeting of March 24th, 2020. It would have been held in the Selectmen's meeting room on the second floor of the town hall, which is located at 325 Main Street, Oxford, Mass. Written comments from the public will be accepted prior to the hearing and will be submitted into the record at the hearing. And now we are doing this remote control. And we welcome Mr. Conrad for joining us. We have received a list of 22 special conditions from Sean Dival, our DPW director. Mr. Conrad, have you had time to take a look at those conditions? Your microphone's not on.
No, I haven't seen that, sir.
Okay, yeah, they're quite intense, so I'm not going to read them all. We'll be here all night to tell you.
Okay.
Board members, have we been able to refer to these?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. What do we do now? Anyone got some ideas then? He hasn't had time to review these. They're quite intense.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by intense?
Well, there's 22 of them, so there's quite a bit of them, you know. I mean, it's got to do with the scope of work and your excavation, your finished grades, things of that nature, you know, that he just wants to make hours of operation, which we discussed, I think, at our last meeting.
Yes.
The routes that you're going to transport, you know, that's what I mean. There's an awful lot of them. That's what I mean by.
I presume nothing is negotiable.
Oh, that would be between you and Mr. Dodwall, I think.
Okay.
Because, yeah, no, I'm sure it's something that you could discuss with him. You know, that's why I'm saying I would have hoped you could have before tonight have gotten these and been able to see this. Actually, it's dated today.
Oh, okay. Because I've been in contact with Emily, and this is the first I'm hearing it. And I don't think she had this list yesterday when we.
Yeah, I'm just happened to look at the date and it says April 28th. So yeah,
So could we continue it for, until next month?
I would definitely think that's a great idea because it's not, a lot of it, I think you'll find is just related to what we've discussed about, but it's just something I want you to review, to protect yourself and all.
Of course,
Um,
of course.
and yeah, that way there we can get things settled, I think. That would be my
So if Emily could email those to me or fax them, I can call, and set up an appointment with your DPW head.
Oh, yeah. If she hasn't already sent these to you, I'd be surprised. So,
I just looked in my email before we went online and there's nothing in there.
okay. Yeah. Oh, we'll get those out to you tomorrow. Right, John?
Right.
Yeah, so
When is your next meeting?
Mr. Conrad, I just wanted to interject before the board makes a decision. Just so that you know, I know that Director Dival is not on with us this evening, but he did want to relay to the board that the special conditions that he's outlined are really going to be the major components of the actual permit. So these are ones that are specific to this particular project. The rest of the permit will be the normal nuts and bolts, but he is making the recommendations. That's whatever's in this memorandum he wants incorporated into the actual special permit as actual conditions.
And can you vote on that?
So they would be voting on directing the special conditions as outlined in the memorandum to be included in the permit. I would say rather than postponing for a month, I think that the director would not mind doing it at least to our next meeting, because I think that Mr. Conrad is looking to be able to also move forward with it, but I don't think that's a tremendous amount of time if that's what you would like to take a look at that. And maybe also for the board to have greater amount of time to make sure that their considerations that have been mentioned at the previous hearings are included in there. And I looked at it and I could see where they were. Sean Dival feels that he's incorporated those, but once again, knowing that the timing of this may allow the board to look through with greater scrutiny before they make that vote to the next meeting, which may be 12th, depending on what the board votes. I don't think would be, too much time.
So when will the next meeting be?
I was saying that the board is going to take a vote tonight that it could possibly be May 12th.
May 12th. Okay. Oh, great. Right. So it's not a month away. It's 2 weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah. That sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. Board members, while we have Mr. Conrad here, do you have any other questions?
Yes,
Yes, John.
yes, I do. It's not so much a question. I did have the opportunity to read the extensive memo from our highway or our superintendent, and I agree with everything that's in there. I mean, I went item by item by item, and it appears to me as though all the questions that we have asked, and certainly the ones that I have asked, have been addressed in there. And
good.
I just want to say that I'm satisfied with what the request of the DPW department has put forward is something that I certainly could live with. I don't know if any other board members have had the opportunity to go through it in any detail, but I don't see anything in there that would preclude us from holding up this this permit. Is there any way that we could possibly, if board members have reviewed this and are satisfied with it, why can't we vote to go along with the permit, subject to Mr. Conrad meeting with the highway superintendent? If Mr. Conrad has no questions or concerns and goes along with what this board has voted on as proposed by the highway department, then the permit could be issued.
That sounds fine. I have one of those strange names. I have 2 first names, 2 last names. My last name is actually Allen.
I know it is, and when I was saying it, I was thinking that in the back of my mind. Why am I calling you Mr. Conrad? It's because the chairman did.
I understand that. It happens all the time to me.
I
I'm fine with that, Mr. Sad. Your suggestion is well-founded, and I have no problem with it.
Now, I'm putting out to the board because I don't know if all of the board members have had an opportunity to review it. But all I'm saying is if they have, and they feel the same way that I do, that they're satisfied with the highway department's presentation, then there's no reason to hold it up. Just make it subject
Sure.
to an agreement between yourself and the highway department.
That sounds
Mr.
fine.
Chair.
Mike, go ahead.
I was just gonna agree again with Mr. Selectman said that going through what the highway department put out, our biggest concern was the amount of traffic, truck traffic, which Mr. Allen had put out in an email or a letter within the packet, and then I'm pretty sure just about everything in the memo that Sean had put out this afternoon was covered in the previous meeting also.
Yep. Thank you. Mike, Megan, sorry.
That's okay. I was actually gonna echo what Selectman Sad said. I went through it as well. And it seemed pretty in line with what we spoke about at the last meeting. And I believe Mr. Allen was pretty much on board with everything we had spoken about last time too. So if it's possible for us to vote on it contingent upon Mr. Allen having a chance to take a look at it, ask any questions of Sean, and then if we need to revisit it. But if he doesn't have any issues with it, I don't see any reason why we should necessarily hold up this project.
I agree. I already looked at it also, and I say the same thing, Mr. Conrad. All I said why it's in depth is because there's a lot.
Mr. Conrad.
It's covering like all the bases. So, it's just got the information about, like you were saying, possibly going down Old Webster Road to Charlton Street,
Right.
and, conditions about dust and just information. So I got a feeling you're going to be fine with it. I could be wrong, but we can always readjust conditions at our next meeting if something changes drastically here. So I personally think that's a great idea. I would entertain a motion that we grant Mr. Allen this earth removal permit with the stipulation that he and Sean are okay with the special conditions. And if not, we'll revisit it on the next meeting.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
Okay, any more comment? Go ahead, Charles. Yes.
Thank you. I just like my only concern with doing it this way was it was a lengthy memo that came from Sean, and I was concerned about Mr. Allen reviewing it. So as long as he's okay with not having an opportunity to review it, can we just have the minutes to reflect the fact that he is okay to do it this way? If that's okay with him?
Please, yes, I'm okay with that.
All right, if we could just have the minutes reflect that, that would be great.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, can I add one thing, that the special conditions as outlined in the memorandum of April 28th, that way it's clear that, you're focused on this, so that you don't have any haggling
Correct.
that the board isn't aware of. I would want the board to know if that occurs.
See, that's always been my trouble, is not always crossing my T's and dotting my I's.
Oh, you did a pretty good
I
motion.
have you people watching over me.
You're just adding the language of special conditions outlined in the
Yes,
memorandum. of
no,
April.
it's very important. I'm just adding a little side. All right, any other comments? Then I'll call for a vote.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes, 5 in the affirmative. So Mr. Conrad, when you get these, just take a look, give a call to Sean, and you should be good to go, I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you, board. And everybody stay safe, please.
I'm sorry, I called you Mr. Conrad again.
That's okay. It happens to me all the time.
Oh,
I got 2
sorry.
first names, 2 last names.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Stay safe.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is our Hannah Howard Scholarship. Let's see, hold on with me. Okay. All right, so we're not going to discuss this at all tonight because after getting some feedback from council, since Selectman Daniels is going to have to recuse himself from any voting or discussion about the matter. And the council has already also stated that the rest of the board should go to the town clerk and write a disclosure or give a disclosure about their involvement so that they're not biased or favoritism. So because of the information from town council, I don't want to discuss this or anything, just to cover all our bases, make sure none of us are putting ourselves in harm's way. So I would like to see if we could get that done and then visit this at our next meeting.
Could I have a comment regarding that, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
If it's, go ahead. I guess.
It's procedural.
Yep.
Okay. In the past, what we have done was we were presented with all the information, and the names of the individuals that have applied were redacted, so that the board had no inkling of who the individuals were. For some reason, when we got it this year, for some reason they didn't get redacted. And I was prepared tonight to abstain because I do know a couple of the families who have students that are involved. So I think it's a good idea, and thankfully we got an opinion from council about the disclosure. I think that's good that we didn't do anything tonight without disclosing. And I think in the future we've got to understand that we shouldn't be presented with this without redacting the names of the applicants. It should be just based on the information presented as far as their academic statistics are concerned in their financial backing.
That's a good question. I asked that very question when I first saw the applicants. And it's something we can get clarified at our next meeting, or if you want to talk to town manager, she can definitely fill you in as to the reasoning behind that. But again, due to council's recommendations, I don't want to talk too much about the Howard fund right at this moment. So I would prefer to just have a motion to table this for this week and bring it up again at our next meeting after the entire board has had a chance to make a disclosure.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
Cheryl, you look confused.
I'm just, can you just clarify for me, what do we need to disclose to the town clerk? Our relationship to any of the applicants, or whom it is that we should get it?
Well, because of one particular applicant that we're all very familiar with. And then in case you know any of the other family, the students that are applying, we have to do a disclosure to just say that we're not going to be biased or show favoritism.
Oh, okay. So we don't have to go to the clerk with our pick, so to speak.
No.
Oh, okay.
Is, I don't know how that works out now virtually. If we just call the town clerk and say, hey,
yeah,
do you want to sign my name to a disclosure? I don't know, Jen, how does that work? How do we do a disclosure?
There is a form, and that you can actually fill it out and submit it back to the town clerk online. But why don't we table the discussion, because we're getting into the discussion, which is something that legal counsel said not to do yet. And I know the process is different, and it's because of the advice from legal counsel. And so all of that can be worked out and make it, the process going forward. And I'd be more than happy to talk at length with each member on why and how to do a disclosure.
Okay. Thank you. Then having a motion and second, I'll call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We will all get our disclosures done by the town clerk, and we'll then be able to vote on this at our next meeting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I just ask one question specific to the scholarship in general, but not necessarily specific to like what we just postponed?
No.
Okay.
I just been advised by counsel not to discuss this, and we've already discussed it a little bit, so,
It doesn't have anything to do with applicants. It just has to do with,
procedure.
yes.
Yeah.
Specific to like the cover sheet that we have, that the applicants get. Or do you want me to just wait until next time?
Yeah, or the best thing would be to talk it over with Jen, because
Okay.
she can.
Well, I think it's a question that other board members will have too,
Yeah.
that we may want to or not consider. I don't know. I can wait.
I probably know what you're talking about. Talk to Jen.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best thing I could say.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is our town manager's report. Town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is the approval of minutes for April 14th, 2020. All members are present. I'd be looking for an approval this evening.
Entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
Any comments? Call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. Those meetings are approved, those minute meetings.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also be looking for a motion to have the chairman of the board have the electronic signature for the chairman, the secretary of the board to have electronic signature on behalf of the board.
I'd entertain a motion to allow our secretary to electronically sign our names for the minutes.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
Any comments?
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the, I think we got 7 on that one, but no,
I think so too.
that's approved. Continue on.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. No problem. The next has to do with the notion of meeting on May 6th. Traditionally, we have our annual town meeting, and we would have a meeting prior to that immediately. Since we are postponing our town meeting from May 6th, there is no necessity to meet on May 6th, which is a Wednesday at 6 p.m. So I think it would behoove the board to make the recommendation that it would make more sense to have it on May 12th at 7 p.m. And I'd be looking for the board to make a determination by a vote.
Entertain a motion to move our meeting to May 12th instead of May 6th.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
Any comments? Call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in affirmative. Next meeting will be May 12th.
Terrific. The next item has to do with a hearing because of a notice from the animal control officer, Kelly Flynn, regarding a dog named Ruby. Our ACO has, just of the board's edification, has taken the dog into her custody at the shelter because of concerns as we wait to actually hold a hearing. a dangerous dog hearing as soon as feasible. And we are looking to see that we comply with the amount of notification that would be necessary for certified mail prior to that hearing. And so I do know that our ACO was expressing that May 12th at 7:30 might be a good time to try to not only schedule the hearing, but to help the residents be arranged to participate remotely in some manner.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to have a dangerous dog hearing for Ruby on May 12th meeting at 7:30.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any comments? Call for a vote then.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in affirmative. We will have a hearing on that date. Thank you.
No problem. I just also wanted to update the board on the Carbuncle Beach a lot that was approved at town meeting last fall. We've been working very closely with the owner. As you know, the lot right next to Carbuncle Park and Beach was the designated area that we were interested in. It had never been formally subdivided out prior to the vote of town meeting. I want you to know that the planning board did hold a hearing and approved the subdivided lot that's adjacent to the lot that the town is moving in the direction for the purchase, including the additional frontage on that peninsula that was important to fishermen. And so this does bring us one more step closer to finalizing the town's purchase. I have been informed by legal counsel this week that because of the pandemic, the title search that gets done as a matter of routine was a little bit behind schedule, but hopefully that will happen and we'll be able to finally say that the town has executed the wishes of the public for assuming responsibility and ownership of that land that's so important to us next to Carbuncle Park. The next item is just to alert the board as a matter of normal information that the Providence and Worcester Railroad has indicated that it is doing their rights of way herbicide application proposal. And their plans are for that application to take place sometime between June 7th and June 20th in their operational plan. We're one of 17 communities that get notified so that we can impart that knowledge to residents and business owners who may live along those rights of way. We don't just get those for railroads, we also get them for National Grid and also for other kind of pipeline projects. I think it's important, and I've asked our conservation board to make sure that we create a link on the conservation page so that if residents have questions about that, they can go to that. You know, last year with the EEE outbreak and the spraying and application, my office was inundated by requests about when things like that were going to happen. So I thought it was a good measure for transparency that even though the board gets notified, the public does have the opportunity to give comment as well. So the information is going to be presented on our websites going forward for their yearly operational plan. Next item is just to let you know that Aquarian has informed the town that their annual water quality report is available on its website, and anybody that has questions about their drinking water or the quality of it can reach out to their customer service division and visit it online at www.aquarianwater.com. And the next item has to do with our police chief, as he had been able to garner some grant funds with regards to actually enforcing speed limits across our community. You'll see a report in your packets that shows that the department had performed over 55 traffic stops in the month of March, primarily for speed violations. And also that unfortunately coming up, they won't be participating in the distracted driver campaign this April because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but they hopefully will get to be able to participate to the Click It or Ticket campaign that would be starting in May. But once again, here we are around the corner. So we'll keep you apprised of that. And the last item is to give a shout out to Glenn Kravosky, who had done a lot of volunteer trash collection and pickup near the French River. I put in some, and Dolge Court. I put in your packets some color photos so that you would see that there's a large number of bag litter. That was his way of celebrating Earth Day, and wanted to also share with the board that he had a good idea that for those people in and around their homes, as they're trying to stay home and practice safe distancing, that he encouraged people that Earth Day is not about one day, it's about an entire month, and hopefully a way of people thinking about their environment. And he said that it would be great if people could also consider cleaning up in their immediate home area, around their little neighborhood area, and he wanted to encourage it. But my point tonight was to say thank you to Mr. Kravosky for once again making sure that the French River and the entry into it for those who recreate in the future is going to be that much better looking and have less litter. And that would conclude my manager's report.
Very good, Jen. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, our selectmen's request will start with the wonderful Cheryl LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jen, since you had an opportunity, you said you've been speaking with the acting superintendent quite a bit. Can you give us some sort of rough overview in terms of what's going on with the schools? And let me tell you where I'm coming from. I've been getting a handful of calls that, I understand homeschooling is hard, most parents aren't teachers and so forth, but I'm hearing that the communication is not very robust from the schools to the parents. And then I'm also hearing, the educational piece of it is a little light right now. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't have anyone in the school systems, so I don't know, but I'm wondering if that was anything you touched upon with the superintendent.
When we talked budgetarily, I did mention and asked about whether, she felt that staff were able to really perform the functions at 100% as much as possible as they would if they were, at the school. And of course, predominantly the largest amount of their staff are teachers and, substitutes and assistants or teaching aides. So I think when I asked that question, the superintendent seemed very confident that they were, that they actually are spending a great deal of time with students in creating their at-home learning environments. I have not heard anything from the direct families of people with children. I do know that the school committee continues to host its meetings and is looking at the overall plans. I will tell you that the superintendent had discussed with me that the secretary for early education and elementary and secondary education had already started to kind of indicate that even maybe the start of the next school year will look radically different than what we see this year, even having, ceased operations for in-school teaching. They're talking about perhaps changing the way that we do busing for kids going forward with lower densities on buses. That may have major implications cost-wise for us. Splitting off and maybe staggering sessions of when children will be in a school. This is all stuff that's actually being talked about now. Nothing has been codified in guidelines yet, but I think a lot of people don't know. The superintendent seemed to be confident in that. I would encourage any resident that would have issues to bring them directly to the school committee, and knowing that they're meeting, and also the superintendent's office if they have concerns about that. And I'm sure that they would be addressed and more than willing to kind of look at that with closer scrutiny.
I got it. Do you, when you were talking with her about budgets, as a result of not having the buildings open so much, do you think that there'll be some sort of building savings or building cost / expenditure savings there. I'm just wondering how they're, I'm wondering how if they're thinking that their books are going to end well, or, were they going to have a surplus? Any thoughts on that?
Well, like I said, I think they're right now in the preliminary phases. I know that she's working with the business director, doing the same thing that I am. There's a lot of stuff that's in flux. So on the one hand, we might have had actually a very strong win in negotiating a bus contract that many other communities actually did not do the same way we are doing it with this community. And I believe that's happened because both she and I were on a unified front. And we're quite adamant about not negotiating that we were going to continue with the regular terms. And so I think on one hand, we may have success with that. But like I said, on the other hand, we might have even a larger loss, could be as much as 110,000 into a normal account that comes through school lunch program. So I think they're looking at all of that. I mean, one of the things I did impress upon the superintendent is that as we're going forward, looking at the fiscal 21 budget, is that I'm already looking at, carving back and looking to be as conservative as possible, both on the municipal side and the school side. So, but I don't think we have a completely clear picture because there are additional costs for deep cleaning and sanitizing the entire school, but yet there's energy savings because lights and things aren't on. And so we won't know all of that balancing out, but I think for real direct costs, we might be able to anticipate where we've gained and where we've lost pretty quickly, particularly now if, they have to the end of the school year. I have her looking at everything from retirements. We're trying to, coalesce around where we think we may have some opportunities for savings in advance. But as you know, most districts are in the final phases of their budget. So, the additional cost that might come or lost revenue that might come is going to be a little bit tricky. But we're trying to think out of the box together. I have some other things that I wouldn't talk about this evening yet because they haven't been completely solidified, but some creative thinking that might go a long way, particularly with our fiscal 21 budget, and might allow us to leverage some more scarce resources in another direction if some things pan out. So not quite ready to discuss some of those things, but they are being discussed. So that I do want the board to understand that those things are starting to happen. I think we've gone from, trying to figure out how to operationalize, entire school district to a home school setting. And it's been exhausting to try to make all of those pieces work. And now we're faced with, okay, from here on out, what's the rest of the year going to look like in looking at what is that going to do to impact the budget, both positively and negatively. And the biggest problem with school districts is, being able to onboard staff at a later date and have people who worked in the district. And it could be a nightmare for a superintendent to have to, cut staff and then try to bring them back based on, numbers and projections that weren't accurate. And that's why even with the state not having that revenue consensus figure, we have to make sure that we can keep as much of our, full-time staff and the core components of our functional pieces of government as much as possible, despite whatever the state collections or revenue forecasts are going to be. And so I do believe Dr. Nash is committed to that. I know I am, because we have to be. So we're looking at that. It's just coming up for air after all of this, operational piece. Now we're starting to shift gears and say, okay, now, we've got the first responders in, we've got the teachers working with the students remotely. We've got all of these other pieces that are starting to coalesce and function. Now we have to shift gears and say, what is this doing to us? And from a financial standpoint, and how are we going to project that out? And I do believe that she's sincere about understanding what I'm asking for from my end, and the seriousness of which we're both going to approach it as managers of the two largest sections of our budget.
Last question. Do you know if they've started their superintendent hire process yet?
I have no idea. I haven't monitored their meetings to find that out. I would suggest aware of their last agendas that have been posted to check on that. I mean, or I can ask, but I had not heard that.
I was just curious. I'm sure that with everything else it's been put off, but I think she only has a 6-month contract. So, okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm all set. Thank you.
I think you told me that it's my turn, but you're muted.
I'm muted. You're right. Selectman Triano, I'm sorry.
I just have a couple of things. I received a phone call from a resident last week, reaching out to me to try to find out who 2 individuals from the DPW were that had been working in a bucket truck in North Oxford. After doing some research, it was Wayne and Randy. And the resident reached out to me because he wanted to give kudos for them because they exemplified what DPW workers should be like. He said that we should be proud of our DPW. He was observing them working and had said that they were courteous and professional. And he really just was very impressed with them and wanted to pass along his praise for both the 2 of them and the department as a whole. So I figured in the midst of all of the gloom, I wanted to bring some good news. I did pass the information along to the town manager and to Sean and Stevie as well, so that the members could get acknowledged. But I also wanted to acknowledge them here and say, thank you for continuing to do a great job and be the kind of employees that we're proud to have. And on the heels of that, I just wanted to give my continued gratitude and appreciation to our first responders, both the fire department, the police department, the healthcare workers, Jen for continuing to run the ship at the town hall and keeping us informed as to all of the updates on a regular daily basis. Everything is still not great, but it seems as though the social distancing is working a bit. And I just wanted to say thank you for everyone on the front lines for continuing to do what you do so that we can all stay safe. I've heard nothing but praise for all of our departments. And the town manager continues to do a great job. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody and stay safe. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate that. We'll go to Selectman Demers.
Good evening, everybody. I don't have a whole lot. Just want to echo Selectman Triano. Give kudos and thanks to the first responders and the healthcare workers and our public health nurses for their continued work on the front lines and helping us all out right now. I know a lot of us are starting to get the whole cabin fever thing of the self-quarantining. It's not over yet. Hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not there yet. So just hang in there. It still is a big issue out in the world right now, the COVID-19, and just hang in there a little bit longer. With the police department, thank you for all those traffic stops. I've noticed numerous times out driving where there's less traffic, so people think it's their speedway. It's been pretty crazy the amount of cars that have zipped past me at high rates of speeds, along with the increased amounts of pretty horrific car accidents throughout central Massachusetts. So again, stay home if you have to go out. It's not a drag strip out there. There are still laws in place. And then in our mail packet, I noticed one of the newspaper articles that we received there, the tail end of the article about Oxford, there was an article by the Dudley Fire Chief that addressed glove use. So everybody that's going out and wearing gloves, It was an article on the proper use of gloves and how gloves can kind of be more of an enemy than a friend with this pandemic. People seem to think they're invincible and more protected by wearing the gloves. That is not the case because you're still touching with the gloves. There's a lot of people I've noticed it in the stores that are still touching their face while wearing the gloves, touching their steering wheels, touching their phones. So once the gloves get contaminated, they're contaminated just like your hands. My biggest issue with the glove use is if you're going to use the gloves, dispose of them properly. I've seen so many gloves just disposed of on the ground at the supermarkets and stuff. So do us all a favor and just find a trash to put them in. And then better yet, don't wear gloves at all. Just wash your hands afterwards. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Other than that, good job to everybody. Keep it up, hang in there, and we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Selectman Sad.
Yeah, I'd just like to also echo what most of you have already said. That, you know, we are thankful that we have people in this community that step forward in the front lines, because it takes a special person to put themselves in harm's way for the benefit of others. And I think there's no greater thing that an individual can do but to have that caring need to help people. So I commend you all our frontline staff, all those people that work in our supermarkets, Walmart, Market Basket, Home Depot. I know you do it because a lot of you have no choice because you need to put bread and butter on the table. But I think there's going to be an end to this. It may not be, it may be later than sooner, but it's going to happen. All things come to an end eventually. Just hang in there. And I think our town is really doing an outstanding job on functioning with limited staff in the town hall. I know that it's all based on how department heads manage their departments. And obviously they must be doing something right. And it all starts at the top. Jen, I'm sure that you're on top of it. You know what's going on in all these departments. And we wouldn't be running as efficiently as we are without your support. And I thank you for that. And I just want to tell everybody, stay safe, especially those people that were directly affected by the virus. We've had a number of individuals that were diagnosed with the virus, and psychologically, it does have an effect on you and your family. So I wish you all the best. Stay healthy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. I only have a couple of things. I happened to be reading I was a little upset Sunday reading the Sunday Telegram. I wonder how much research they do and if we were even contacted, Jen, because there was an article in the paper about town meetings and elections being postponed. And you read down in the article and you look at Oxford and it still had same town meeting date and election date. And it just was faulty information and kind of bugged the heck out of me why they don't, do their research before they publish something like that. So I just had to get that off my chest.
Okay.
The other thing is, I don't know if we could look into, I happened to come by down Main Street today to come down Howard, and the traffic coming out of Bacon Street was all the way down to the corner of Bacon where it turns the corner from Howard. And it made me think when we did Charlton Street, we had offices all over the place directing traffic. And I was wondering why we didn't, if Sean could check on that or the chief or somebody, why we didn't have an officer trying to help those people get out of Bacon Street, because I just couldn't believe the amount of traffic that was on that road. So if you could have them check that out, it was right around, it wasn't the time when IPG was getting out. It was actually earlier than that. It was around 2:30 in the afternoon. So they don't get out normally till 3. So with the construction that's going to start happening there, it'd be nice if we could have a little bit more control over traffic. And that's all I have. So
Okay. I'll check.
yeah, thank you, Jen. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion?
I second that motion.
All right, call for a vote.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes, 5 in the affirmative. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Stay safe and see you in a couple of weeks.